Hello and welcome to the Talking Law podcast, the podcast where you can hear barristers, solicitors, managing partners and more talk about their careers and lives in law. I'm Sally Penni, MBE. I'm a barrister at Kenworthy's Chambers and the founder of Women in the Law UK. Talking of which, you can now get tickets for both the annual dinner on the 9th of March in Manchester and the Women in the Law UK conference on the 10th of March, supported by Irving Mitchell. Tickets are available from womeninthelawuk.com. Today I'm delighted to be talking law with two very exciting guests. Firstly, an interview with Dr. Shaun Wallace, who is a barrister at Great James Street Chambers and a celebrity quizzer from The Chase. I'm also joined by Tom Lyas. Tom is the head of resourcing at Browne Jacobson, as well as the firm's lead on social mobility. This episode is supported by the law group at Salford Business School, and it is also supported by Browne Jacobson, who are a law firm for positive impact across business and society. Do check them out by visiting their website. I met both my guests at the Fair Access programme, which was run by Browne Jacobson, and I asked Tom to explain what it is all about, really.
So FAIR is a social mobility initiative which we came up with. It came into existence at the end of 2019, just before the pandemic. It came about because I felt, and as did a number of other people, that access to the legal profession, particularly work experience opportunities, was not fair.
Yeah.
So it's very, very simple initiative, but FAIR stands for fairer access into real experience. And what this is paid work experience opportunity, where at least 50% of opportunities go to students from a low socioeconomic background with no connections to the firm.
Yes.
And this is against the backdrop. The reason why we felt it wasn't fair is that when we actually did an audit of the work experience Browne Jacobson were giving, we were, I say horrified, but unsurprisingly not surprised to find that 96% of the available opportunities back in 2019 were actually going to sons, daughters, nieces, nephews of clients or partners.
Yes.
So it really was a case of keeping it in the family. And unfortunately, that's where we realised we needed to change. As part of the FAIR initiative, we do a couple of virtual insight events, as we'd call them, each year.
Yeah.
One around Easter time, and we've got another one in the autumn, and the next one's on the 25th of October, so I'll just put that out there. But what this is it's a fantastic, very large scale virtual event, and we have fantastic guest speakers, not just from law firms, but from barristers' chambers, from in-house careers, and actually experts from outside the law who can help with virtual sort of building of your personal brand.
Yeah.
And obviously that's where I met both of you.
Yeah.
And extremely grateful to have crossed paths with you both, because I think you share the same ethos. It's very, very clear that, despite your highly successful careers, you're still willing to give that time to the next generation to help their career prospects. So that's a whistle-stop tour of how we came across it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Because that sets the scene beautifully. So can I come back to you, Shaun?
Yeah.
Because you've been at the bar for a very long time.
I certainly have, since 1984. I've always wanted to be a lawyer ever since I was 11 years old. And my journey in terms of getting to the 27th of November, 1984, the day I got called to the bar,
Yes.
Has been what I would consider to be an up and down experience. When people see me, they think, oh, you were born clever, you were born intelligent.
Yeah.
But 42 years ago, I didn't pass my A-levels at the first time of asking. It took me 4 attempts to pass O-level English language. And that's one of the reasons I wrote my autobiography, because I want people to realise if you do have setbacks in life, it doesn't define you as an individual. It doesn't mean to say that your future is behind you. And when you do have setbacks, it's all well and good that you pointing the finger of suspicion or pointing the finger of blame on one or two people. But the first person you've got to look at is the reflection in the mirror and ask yourselves, the buck stops with me, why I haven't got to where I've got to. And it's a period of reflection about you looking at yourself, and deconstructing yourself, and using the help or resources of people who've got to your best interests at heart. And I was fortunate enough to have that in the form of my elder sister, some of the teachers who basically supported my lifelong ambition to become a lawyer.
Yes.
And when I eventually came off the academic conveyor belt, it was a great moment in my life, and it still is the best achievement I have had to my life to date. Because as a young boy, I was like the Muhammad Ali. I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to be the greatest. But if you talk the talk, you've got to be able to walk the walk.
Yes.
And I've stumbled my way. I managed to actually know how to walk. And when I got called to the bar, the one thing which struck home to me was this. All the hard work, all the blood, sweat and tears, the disappointment and the ultimate joy of being called to the bar, all it's simply done was brought me to the start line of a different challenge. And that's what I always try to stress to students in relation to the fact that never ever rest on your laurels, never ever believe that you've made it just because of the fact that you passed one exam or you passed another. Because all it simply does is give you the entrance to the start line of a different challenge.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Well, that journey is really interesting. Now, I've read your book, and others may not have read it. Now, I know, because I've interviewed a lot of people, that when people write books, they promote it to death. Now, your book's about 4 years old, and you have to really seek it out. So I'm going to plug it for you.
Thank you.
Because it's so powerful.
It did receive a lot of attention by virtue of the fact that, I am an ITV stable member, for want of a better expression, and I was on various chat shows and talk shows. But obviously with the pandemic, that did prevent me from actually exploiting it and plugging it in the way which I wanted to.
Yeah.
I have plugged it in New Zealand, so it's been widely received over there because I do a lot of work in New Zealand as well because of my quizzing exploits.
Yes.
It doesn't mean to say that the book's outdated, and as I say, it will receive a second wind, I would imagine, hopefully on platforms like your wonderful podcast.
Absolutely, and I hope so, because it really, really is inspirational. Shaun, tell me, because you wanted to write the book to leave a legacy and influence people, I suppose, like those who were on the FAIR event and the virtual event, and I've seen that's won a lot of awards. But on those awards, they're very on the FAIR virtual events, they're very diverse. It's a broad spectrum of people. And I wondered if we can, and I'll come back to Tom in a moment, but when you came to the bar, was it diverse?
It wasn't, as you no doubt will know, Sally. Seeing a black face, let alone a black female face, was like Halley's Comet coming around.
Yeah.
But people have got to be pioneers in the profession. It's just like man landing on the moon. Once you make that breakthrough, once you shatter that concrete ceiling, it's important to actually leave footsteps behind for others to basically say, well, if he's managed to actually do that through the adversity, then it's footsteps which I can follow. And that's why I've written the book what I've had. That's why I've used the platform in the way I should do, hopefully in an altruistic way, where people can simply say, yes, it was tough for me, Shaun, but yes, it might be tough for me, but if I use him as a goal model to actually follow, then hopefully the path which he's helped create will make it easier for me to follow.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me come to you, Tom, then, just on that subject, really. Because, you're a white middle-aged man. I don't know if you are middle-aged, actually. I think you're younger than me.
You look very good.
It does look very good. I need to take what he's taking.
42, yes. I'll take that as middle-aged.
Baby oil. But why are you so passionate about that? Because it is noticeable at your, I speak at a lot of events. You will host a lot of events. And I know lots of law firms will have had, the reason for motivating the FAIR program, your passion for social mobility. But why are you so passionate about it yourself? Because I talk a lot about allies and real allies, and you really are somebody who's, being active and living it.
Yeah, indeed. And thank you for that. I mean, it's, I genuinely believe that, enthusiasm, passion, will carry you a long, long, long way. I mean, it's a question actually I've been asked a number of times. Somebody always says, well, what's your social mobility story?
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily it took me a while to figure out what is my story. I had a pretty, orthodox, if that's the right term, sort of upbringing, in terms of where I live. I had professional parents and, didn't really sort of want for much. I chose not to go to university. I didn't necessarily feel that connection with academia. I kind of just wanted to get out into the world.
To work, yeah.
But interestingly, when I did get out into the world, I did very quickly start to realise that, academics aren't everything. And I don't want to sort of make this about academics, but actually there's a lot more to if you think of the word talent, it's such a broad encompassing sort of thing. Now, I think where my real passion came, so I previously to working at Browne Jacobson, I worked at Whitbread, who probably best known for Costa Coffee before Coca-Cola bought them, and the Premier Inn brands. And prior to that, I was at the head office at Tesco in Hertfordshire, and I was within the graduate recruitment and the interns sort of sphere. Now, the volume of hires in those businesses was so big. I mean, at the time at Tesco, they employed 503,000 people. But when we were looking at hiring 300, 400, 500 graduates a year, 600, 700, 800 interns a year, very quickly I started to sort of, because it was you could see a trend within hires rather than small pockets because the volume was so big. And I started to question, and strangely enough, I said this to Shaun earlier, the graduates were very good that we started to get, but there was no diversity. And I don't mean in terms of ethnicity. It was diverse of thoughts, diverse of backgrounds, diverse of perspective. It was getting to the point where the recruitment process was starting to create what I call cookie cutter graduates. And it was at that point we said, actually what would happen if you didn't have the bar of a 2-1 or certain A-level grades? What would happen? What would really happen if you took that off? And you're going back a decade at least now, maybe 12 years. And it was at that point that I started we did take off the grades, but I saw for the first time the impact of, if you have a barrier, be that in a recruitment process, or actually you're only targeting Russell Group universities with your careers visits, if you only look in certain places, I'll be honest, you're only going to find certain things. And I think my story, my passion comes because when we took those barriers off, the world did change. We started to get people around a table that were from a very different background to previous graduate cohorts. But the innovation that brought, the different perspective that brought, the commercial difference it brought, it just ignited something that I thought, do you know what? There are artificial barriers in play here. That if you don't, and this is the key point, if you don't assess somebody in context to their background, when you're making a hiring decision, you're going to put a barrier in place that's going to stop you getting the best talent.
Absolutely. Here. Gosh, you summarised that so brilliantly. Shaun, I'd like to come back to you and ask you about being on TV. And because even my mum watches The Chase. I don't know what's so addictive about it. And she's like, do you know that guy? I haven't told you I'm interviewing.
My mum is the biggest
I
fan.
know, like literally.
The biggest
fan.
Fan.
It's good. And what you've done, and I'll come back to the bar in a moment and some of the most recent things we've been doing, like bar action and bar strikes, the criminal bar. But how did it come about that you were on TV making Black people, I'm going to be quite direct, look clever? Because people don't think beyond. And
as I've always said, one of the most fantastic quotes I got after I won Mastermind was that somebody said to me at Shaun Wallace's victory was the equivalent of Neil Armstrong walking on the moon. And he basically went to show that we're more than just musicians, we're more than just world sportsmen. It demonstrated Black intellect, and it brought it out to the fore. Now, I owe a great deal in relation to my success to the bar, because I've used those transferable skills, be able to think on my feet, the ability to research, the ability to be fearless. If I get a question wrong, I'm confident I'm going to get the next question right. So those transferable skills have served me well in the shark-infested world of entertainment. Now, I'm the world's first chaser.
Wow.
Because in 2008, I was asked by ITV to take part in what they considered to be an exciting new game show concept. And I'd retired from quizzing in 2004 when I won Mastermind, because at the end of the day, where could I go? My cover was blown.
That's true.
They're not going to let me on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire because they know I'm going to sort of win £1 million.
Win £1 million.
Without even using the lifelines.
I know Tom and I are like, wow.
Right, so if you ever need to call a friend.
Exactly.
I know who I'm calling.
Well, I've been called before, actually. But I then was asked to come out of retirement, and I did so reluctantly in 2008 when BBC were looking for a new egghead. I tried to explain to them, look, I'm not really interested. I've retired now. And they got the producer of the show to bring me on 3 separate occasions. And I said to them, look, I'll do it, but I'm in the middle of a trial. I could hardly say to her, Your Honour, oh, by the way, Your Honour, can I simply nip out to do a quiz show in the middle of a jury trial? He would have told me where to get off.
Yeah.
So what they did to accommodate me, they shifted the recording date to the weekend. And they put me up against some really good players. In the second round, they didn't think I was going to win because they put me up against the then reigning world quiz champion.
Wow.
And only one person in the room thought I was going to win, and that was me. And I had a trial starting the following day. And I would have done the trial over and above doing that quiz, because for me, I'm a lawyer who happens to be on TV, not the other way around. And my client's interest will always come first. But the case was postponed. So they turned around and said to me, look, there's only one recording day left. If you want to become an egghead, you've got to play the quarterfinal, semi-final, and final all in one day. And I did. When you're winning, it's all great. I was in the studio for 13 hours and I lost, tripped to the final hurdle. And I thought, that's it. I've come out of retirement. No more quizzing for me. So anyway, in the autumn of 2008, I got a phone call from ITV. Said, could I come in for an interview for an exciting new game show concept? So I went there sort of, okay, so I've done loads of pilots before. So they asked me 30 questions. I got 28 out of 30.
Wow.
So they said to me, what am I doing quizzing wise? I said, look, I've retired now. I said, oh, by the way, I'm on Are You an Egghead? And they said to me, how did you do? I said, I'm not telling you. If you want to see how good I am, use that as my audition. I walked out. So when they showed me losing on December the 2nd, 2008, to Barry Simmons, who's a very, very good friend of mine. The following day, ITV asked me to come to a pub on the Gray's Inn Road. So I walked in, and who I see? A load of ITV executives and a load of contestants.
Wow. Playing
this exciting new game show concept called The Chase. And anyway, it was not me playing cricket. Bang to the boundary, bang to the boundary. So they were really impressed. So I was working on that show. I had to do 3 separate auditions. Then in April 2009, they brought in Mark Lebet.
Oh,
so they then was going to do the pilot in the old Granada studios up in Manchester. Up
to Manchester, here.
Which was on the 1st of June 2009, a day before my 49th birthday. Anyway, I was doing a murder trial in the Old Bailey on that day for 7 weeks. So the client I was defending, I got him off an attempted murder trial at the Luton Crown Court the year before. So I went up to him, I said to my leader, I said, look, I need to do this pilot. He said, look, Shaun, as long as you get cover, I'll let you go, but you've got to clear with your client. So because I got on well with my client, he said, okay. So I got something from my chambers to cover me. I had to pay that person £5,000 a week, because you know what it was like. Right, and I got £100 for the 5 shows I did each. But for me, you've got to speculate to accumulate, because I knew it was a good concept. Both myself and Mark did. And they only put up £150,000 prize money for the whole week. Anyway, after day 2, the person who put up the money left. So they turned around and said to him, why are you leaving so early? He said, oh, those guys are too good. So that's when we knew this show had legs. 13 years later, Mark's been a chaser in America and Australia. I've done the Australian version of The Chase, so has Anne. And, we've had different spin-offs. And I never ever envisaged that the popularity of the show, the platform it's given me, and it's allowed me to use my platform in even a bigger way, as I say, about creating opportunities, creating what I've considered to be the ladder of opportunity for people to climb down. Because I want people to realise, I want to be like Shaun Wallace. I say to them, no, I don't want you to be like me. I want you to be a better version. Because you take that philosophy, it's like an acorn. If they believe in it, that acorn will grow into an oak, from an oak to a forest, and so on and so forth. And if we perpetuate that idea of being not selfish with what we've got, and be more altruistic. I always talk about the pizza of life. We can all have a slice. Yes. But those people who are greedy and want to gorge on it for themselves, you know what? Guess what it's going to do ultimately? Kill them.
Yeah.
Right. So, that's why, I ally with people like Tom. I ally with people like yourself, because it gives us the opportunity to create platforms like this, to put the message out that irrespective of your age, ability, sexuality, colour, If you've got the talent, that talent should never be denied. That talent should never be sort of stifled or stymied or sort of have the concrete ceiling above you. And we are living examples whereby we've shattered that concrete ceiling. We've looked at a world from a different perspective in relation to how we want it to go, how we want to see a profession. If you live in a multicultural, diverse society, then I always say the professionals, the businesses should be staffed and managed by people of the same ilk of the people who they're representing.
Absolutely.
Because if you don't, then what's the point?
Yeah. You're just stuck, really, aren't you?
Yeah.
In that. Shaun, you seem quite down to earth, quite confident. Have you always been?
No, as I've always said to people, nobody's born an advocate. Nobody's born confident. You know, if you come out into the world, you are natured and nurtured. I was a chatty kid. And I think you've read from my autobiography. You know, they said Shaun will make a very good clown. But I knew what I wanted in life. If you used to come to my house, I've got a mural on my wall called My Inspiration, people from Sojourner Truth to Muhammad Ali. Because as a young black boy growing up, when you see role models who are making a difference in the world, the best boxer in the world was black, the best footballer in the world, Pele, was black, the best cricketer in the world was black. And I used to say, if I had even a fraction of their ability, I'm going to make something of myself. So it's all what Tom said to me before. What you see is what you want to be.
Yeah.
So if you see somebody of the same colour of your skin and they're making significant strides and you want to be like that, you can be like that. But I think it's incumbent on people who are, all I am now is today's guardians. Everybody who's in a position of responsibility are just guardians for today, holding the torch of responsibility, which you eventually have got to pass on.
Yeah.
Because the one thing about mortality is a great leveler. The one thing, you can have all the riches, all the fame in the world, but once you die, you can't take it with you.
Yeah.
And I've always said to Tom, for me, it's about leaving a legacy down the ages. People always remember William Shakespeare for what he wrote. That was 4 centuries ago.
Yeah.
And if I could even have that people remember my name in the year 2025, 2026, because what I believed and stood for, the Lord couldn't have paid me a greater compliment.
Wow, that's so powerful. I have to say that to my kids. Tom, do you agree? Because it's a really powerful thing, isn't it? To say that, you can't be what you don't see, actually. And has that been a focus for you? Because who are your role models growing up?
Do you know, it's interesting. I mean, I think, do I agree? Absolutely. Certainly in the last few years, it's become more and more, probably since I came into law, I have to be respectful to, the industry that pays my wages. But actually, it's probably the least diverse profession or sector, that I've worked within.
Yeah.
It's great for me because, I see that as a good challenge.
Yes.
I see that as an opportunity more than anything to make such a big difference. And as I said, we've been very successful with what we tried to do.
Yeah.
It's interesting because people will always say, "Oh, you've made some brave decisions." They're not necessarily brave decisions. And I am, there was a couple of things that I've done which I never asked permission to do. It's quite sort of well known. And our former managing partner did once say, he said, "It's a good job you didn't ask, because you probably would have been told no, or you would have been talked out of making things such as removing the need for a 2-1 and any A-level grades to join Browne Jacobson."
Yeah.
But the interesting part is, Ian, the former managing director, said, managing partner said, it's a good job we didn't ask and we didn't talk about it, because we would have missed out on all of the change, the positive change.
Absolutely.
I think the biggest sort of penny drop moment for me. So we have a truly wonderful individual called Ollie Holmes. He's the head of diversity and inclusion at Browne Jacobson. He joined us in January 2021 from Accenture. He never worked in law. And I'll tell you what was really interesting. Sorry, slightly rabbit hole here.
No.
I remember when we decided, look, we've done some great work, but we need a professional to tell us the direction for our diversity and inclusion initiatives. We were told when we went to recruitment agencies, it's almost coming into the legal profession as a diversity and inclusion professional is like career suicide. And I was like, wow. I was like, honestly, is it going to be this difficult? Now, strangely enough, I think, we were told you might get 1 or 2 candidates maximum. And if you get that, you're lucky. We actually ended up with getting a shortlist of 9 individuals. But that was only because And it's back to sort of the point we were able to say, look, I had a role in, not Ollie will back this up, around encouraging from the outside, it may look like an incredibly challenging industry to create change.
Yeah.
But actually, here's my journey. Here's what I've done. I'm not from a legal background. I came to this, and here's what I've done. Here's what I see as the opportunities. And Ollie, we convinced him to have a conversation with him, as we did with the other 8 candidates. We got 9 in the end. And actually, it was great because we did sort of help them understand there are great opportunities for D&I progression in the industry.
Yeah.
But interestingly, when we did the first fair event, it was Ollie who said, I cannot tell you the importance of visual representation. Now, that's not to say that anything on that first fair event is manufactured, but we purposely made sure that there was good representation from within Browne Jacobson, but also across the profession. Yeah. Now, I remember getting a message through from LinkedIn who kind of almost inquiring, what are you doing? Because you've had 350-something thousand engagement points in 24 hours. You're in the top 1% of a global conversation. And what have you done, basically? But it was the traction that was being created. And I will never forget, it literally will stay with me for the rest of my career. Students who had continually been told, a profession in the law, a career within the law is not for people like you.
Yeah.
And these were Black individuals, Asian individuals, minority ethnic. I remember a particular person who's incredibly important to me. I won't name who they are, but they talked about the struggle of wearing effectively a burqa and the stigma that had come with that. And somebody who had been on the fair event as a visual representation, a high-performing legal professional who explained the challenges and barriers they'd overcome to get there.
Yeah.
And this person, in an hour period, said, you know what, I'm proud of my background, I'm proud of how I look, I'm proud of my religion. I'm never going to let anyone else get in the way and tell me I can't have this. And at that moment, it was a real penny drop for me that I was like, you need to see this because there's not enough people here.
Yes.
Before I waffle on too much, just refer back to Shaun's book. As I said, we were introduced by another good friend of yours, Chris Dorr, who is another absolute super ally in terms of social mobility.
Absolutely.
But I remember reading Shaun's book, and a couple of things really struck me in that. And it was, as I said, I think you had this aspiration that you wanted to be a lawyer or a barrister, but actually when you first got into it, it probably wasn't quite what you'd imagined it was going to be. And it took you a couple of times and a couple of different moves around chambers to find somewhere that was an environment that would absolutely get the best out of somebody. And I think as I said, for me, the other important part here is you can take the best talent, but if you put them in an environment that isn't right for them and isn't going to allow them to be the best and flourish, the whole thing's pointless anyway. And I think what we're trying to do, as I said, it's the importance of opening a profession so that people don't feel they have to be a certain way, conform to something that they're not.
Yeah.
Because, it's that old adage, be the best version of you, not a second-rate version of someone you think you need to be.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's so true, isn't it?
It certainly is. I always talk about, trying to climb that greasy pole, trying to get to the top of the legal profession. And if you don't know to hold on to that pole, inexorably, you're going to slide right down to the bottom. And the one thing I don't hide from young students who are coming into the profession is this. There are 15,000 students who graduate. There are only 4,000 places. Yeah. So there's going to be that competitive element. And I will say this to students, whoever gets chosen sometimes, it's a question of luck as opposed to judgment. Sometimes you need to be in the right place at the right time, because I don't care how successful you are, you still need that bit of luck to be seen by the right person who will give you that opportunity. But when you jump from the chorus line to lead singer, you've got to be able to sing.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you simply won't get to where you want to. And for me, it's always about telling students that it's not going to be easy. Nobody's going to hand you something. But you, and sometimes, these sort of struggles of sending one CV after another and getting the knockback, because it happened to me. I'm sure it happened to you.
Yeah, it did.
It took me 4 years to get my first tenancy. And, you've got to develop resilience, perseverance, and a determination. I think those are important ingredients. But we must also be aware of the mental health aspect, because a lot of people put that aside in relation to the fact that mental well-being and mental health is very, very important, because sometimes it can be very, very demoralizing. Students who, as I say, are saddled with debt. They've had to pay university tuition fees, then they've got to pay the professional fees to actually do the exams. And as we can see in relation to the reason why we've gone into an indefinite barrister strike, there are junior barristers who are earning, after 3 years call, £12,000 per year. And what we got to stop is a hemorrhaging of talent, and preventing students from basically saying, well, I wish I went down the solicitor's route, because if I had, then I probably could have gone into the commercial sector and earned loads of money. But I wrote an article and basically said that when you do get the opportunity and you do show the talent, it's not. I don't want students to actually go into law thinking that we're going to earn loads of money, because, as I've always said, if you're good and you've got the talent, money will chase you. Don't put the cart before the horse. Because if you do that, then you'll be doing the profession a great disservice. And you see a lot of lawyers, sadly, not so much now, I'm sure it still happens, who cut those necessary corners because they put the interest of the money before the interest of their client. And the one thing I was always taught at bar school was this: you've always got to put your client's interest first. You've got to advise them in relation to not what they want to hear, but you giving them dispassionate professional advice based upon your ability to give that advice.
Absolutely.
And if you do that, because remember, we live in an adversarial system of justice. Ultimately, there's got to be a winner, there's got to be a loser. The one thing you can't control or dictate is the nature of the evidence which you're confronted with. Right? You can't. But your ability as a lawyer will be judged upon how you represent your clients, because sometimes you've got to climb that greasy pole, you've got to climb that Mount Everest in relation to the evidence. And as I say, in that adversarial system, there's got to be a winner, there's got to be a loser.
Absolutely.
But never ever tell a client what he or she wants to hear. Be dispassionate in your advice and give that in a professional manner, because you'll be doing the profession a great service.
Spot on. I did read what you wrote, and I also saw you interviewed recently by Catherine Baskin, Legal Hatchet, in the Times, talking about being a lawyer who happens to be on TV. And in that little section there, you talked a lot about lots of different topics I want to pick up on, including well-being and mental health. But it did occur to me, actually, why do you still practice law? You've obviously earned enough, you're well known.
It's not about money, it's about, the one thing I don't take for granted is this, and I always say this, and it's true: I'm only as good as my last closing speech as a lawyer. I'm only as good as the last question I answered correctly as a quizzer. The one thing I don't take for granted is the fickle nature of the entertainment industry. Guess what? It can go tomorrow.
Yes, or any job for that matter.
Right. So, I'm a lawyer who happens to be on TV, not the other way around.
Absolutely.
It's the law which helped get me to use those transferable skills into a different sphere. And it's important that if you do have those transferable skills, because that's the way how you're taught as a lawyer, be it a barrister or a solicitor, the art of preparation, the art of research, the art of giving a fearless, objective professional advice. And if you can use those skills in a transferable way, you can take those out of law, go into the field of banking, go into the field of medicine, go into the field of... It's using those transferable skills which, say, the law grounds you, whether you're a barrister or a solicitor.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've got you, so I'm going to focus on you for a moment before I go to Tom. What do you do for your mental health then? Because you've got, the high profile, not just the cases, but the TV side. I saw actually in my research that you still help out at church and things. It was a fundraiser. I saw you there giving a speech. I thought, crikey, how does this guy have time to go and give it, as a fundraiser or something? And then there was a church, and there was something else about, core donation, plus, really positive stuff. So how do you find time, one? And two, is that how you deal with your well-being? What do you do for wellness?
Okay, right. I know what it's like. Let's say 25 years ago with Shaun who, with a practice which, as I say, was up and down. And even at the age of 40, when, as I say, my practice in the doldrums because of the fact that I broke my ankle and I had to practice at home. And, sometimes you wonder, the dreams and ambitions you had of getting to the top have flown by. So I know what it's like to have disappointment and sort of worry, and as to whether or not my future really was behind me. And you do need that change of luck, and that change of luck occurred when I won Mastermind. And when I won, nobody knew. First time my friends knew and my parents knew was when they saw it on telly.
Wow.
Because I won it 6 months prior to actually broadcasting the final, and it gave me a chance to reflect in relation to how I know it's going to change my life, but it wasn't going to change me as a person. Now, believe it or not, I've lived on the same road I've lived on for the last 58 years.
Have you?
Yeah, I'm not going to move. If you're happy in an environment where you are, what's the point of moving? Because guess what? You can only live in one house at one time. You can only drive on a nice car at one time. And as I say, it's not about being greedy.
Yeah.
It's about being content.
Yeah.
It's about being happy. It's about being. So I know what it's like. And the one thing I'm grateful for what happened to me was it happened to me later on in life, because I can appreciate, firstly, what it's like to have nothing. B, what it's like now to have the public eye constantly on my sites. And the one thing I'm always conscious about is that the great old adage by Andy Warhol was this: you're only famous for 15 minutes. And if they do shut off the lights of fame, guess what? I'm comfortable in the dark, because I was before.
Yeah, well, that's so true.
Yeah. So, if the chase goes tomorrow, it goes. But guess what? What I've achieved so far will never go.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to use what I have, even if I no longer am in the public eye, still continue to do what I do. When I first starting out as a young practicing barrister, I taught at Hackney College 4 nights a week for 14 years.
Wow.
From 1985 to 1999. For me, it was important as a black professional to go into what was, it's now gentrified, but it was a deprived area then. And basically say to students, look, irrespective of your age, my mantra is this, Sally: the way in which you can stay in control of your destiny is to educate your mind. Now, as I say, Tom quite rightly points out, it's not always about academia. Sometimes I think, the qualifications do help you get to where you want to get to. Yeah. But it's about, there are different routes to get to the same destination. Yeah. And if you've got the talent and you've got the support, then, as Tom quite rightly points out, the mere fact that you've got first class honours degree from Cambridge doesn't mean to say that you can make a brilliant lawyer. No. And I've been able to a lot of people. Okay. As will you. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. So for me, it's always about the importance of being in control of your own destiny. And for me, you've got to educate your mind in order to do so. Be it in the form of academic qualifications, or be it in the form of having the right proper training and support in order for you to get to where you want to get to. So, I go into schools. Next week, I'm going into a prison to talk, because I always say to young people who have been incarcerated, you show me an individual who hasn't got a plot on their landscape. We've all made mistakes. In 2016, I had to appear before the professional body for, giving wrong advice. So I know what it's like to let your standards slip. And I was very, very disappointed about that, but I learned a lesson. So again, I want people to, because as I say, my life's an open book. Yeah. What you want to find out about me, it's there. Yeah. So for me, we all have blocks in our landscape. We all make mistakes, as long as you learn from those mistakes. So that's why I go into prisons and basically say to them, listen, you're here for a reason, you're here for a purpose. But one day you're going to be released. You need to prepare yourself for your eventual reintegration into society. And I can point to you many people who have been in your situation and have still made a positive contribution to society. Yeah. So don't despair, but you've got to want it, And, if you're not given that chance, you're not given, sometimes you've got to create that chance. And it's very, very difficult for people who have previous convictions to be given that opportunity. Well, if not, then try and create your own opportunities. Yeah, in whatever way you can.
Now, I could talk to you all day. We're running out of time because you've got all this quizzing stuff to do. So annoying. But whilst I've still got you, can I ask you very, very quickly, and then I'll move on to some other questions. Why have you got involved in the bar action being taken by the Criminal Bar Association. Yesterday, as we record this, you were outside the Supreme Court and you gave a passionate speech there about why we were calling the government to honour the Bellamy report. Firstly. Secondly, why are you using your platform in that way? You could just sit at home and do nothing, couldn't you? Go to court, do your practice, do all these things. Why are you using your platform for the good? Because
my platform is for, you can only use your fame in a selfish and altruistic way so far. For me, it's about using it in a different direction. The bar owes me nothing. I owe the bar a great deal. We grew up in a situation whereby criminal legal aid was properly funded. That meant that the poorest people of our society had the access to justice, to proper representation. Yes. What we've seen over the last 30 years is the chronic underfunding of the profession, seduced firstly by headlines of so-called fat cats who are basically taking the taxpayers' money. And they've used that as a pretext to basically say that, these lawyers who are earning money from the criminal legal aid and earning vast sums are basically taking the taxpayers for a ride. So therefore, what we need to do is to exponentially cut legal aid. But what you've basically seen over the last 30 odd years, and especially in relation to the pandemic, is a proper underfunding by the courts in relation to the system, a proper underfunding in relation to the court structure, because they've sold off so many court buildings to the tune of 238 million pounds has been saved by the Ministry of Justice. They cut back on judges' sitting days, so you wonder why, and not surprised why, the backlog of cases has risen exponentially from 41,000 pre-pandemic to 59,000 now. Yeah. It's all well and good that the government, what I consider to be operating sleight of hand policies, having the Bellamy report, sitting on it for 9 months, and basically then turning around and saying, well, we can't apply the rules to the current existing cases because there's a legal reason for doing so. Well, that was blown out of the water in relation to legal advice. Yes. Then they turn around and say, without the so-called Lord Chancellor, who's supposed to be the head of the judiciary, the head of the legal profession, simply not engaging with lawyers because of the fact that they think that by passing a statutory instrument in July, basically saying from October the 1st, 2022, to new existing cases, that's when we're giving you an extra £7,000. Really? Well, what about the existing cases that we're working on now? Because it's going to take you, in relation to the report, to clear by 2025. So that means by the time the cases, so far as new existing cases, and you know how long it takes for trials to come off to start and to when you're being paid. Yes. We're in a double figures inflation. By the time we get to it, the figures mean nothing. Absolutely. So the reality is the government needs to be held to account and needs to be honest with society, because if you want the so-called world-class system which you've been promoting in relation to the reason why we're trying to attract lawyers, then properly fund it and you'll get world-class service. Absolutely. And in the context of diversity, so many people have left. I mean, last week, very, very good criminal barrister, woman, left. Yeah. And how are we going to clear the backlog if all the people leave? Not just women, and one thing that really melted my heart was a young barrister who spoke passionately. She came from America. And she wanted to actually, was in love with the British customs, in love with the British legal system, and qualified as a barrister, which is an achievement in itself. Yes. She was earning less than below the minimum wage. And what really made me sad was that when she said to me that the way in which I used to buy lunch is to save up the sort of points from Boots cards in order to actually buy a sandwich. Oh. And eventually she had to leave. And that's what I'm talking about. That person, sadly, could have been the next QC, could have been the next judge. Yeah. If you take away the diversity of talent, which I've seen over the last 38 years, the growth of women coming to the profession, the growth of black women coming to the profession. I went to a silks party 3 months ago, where two of my favourite black females became silks. Yeah. That would never happen now. No. Right? If you take away that diversity of talent. And what you'll simply get, as Tom basically said, you'll get back to the situation whereby less people in society won't be able to afford the best lawyers, and the type of people who can go into the bar will go back to the 50s type of situation whereby if you're from a certain ethnic background, from a certain social background, you'll be the person who'll be representing the clients. In a diverse society who they can't relate to.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's why, as I say, the fight continues.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to let you go. Two quick questions then. One, what advice would you give to anyone coming into the profession now? You've already given loads of advice, so I don't want you to repeat it. Or would you say don't come?
No, I'll always say don't come, because you know why? If we don't attract the talent, what will simply happen is that the bar will wither on the vine and die.
Yeah.
So, I've always said this. You don't know what the future holds. Nobody can predict the future, but the one thing we need to do is to make sure that the bar as an institution still is thriving. And we need to make sure that not only do we protect the professional lifetimes of those in the bar, but future professional lifetimes. That's why we're striking.
Yeah, absolutely. So do come to our sister professions, solicitors, or the bar, or the other many routes that people come to the bar. And so, Shaun, tell me, what's next? Because Lord Reed, who's the current president of the Supreme Court, has said he wants to see diversity, and by that I can mean neurodiversity, or indeed, other diversity of thought. And we've got a great quizmaster here. And he'd like to see that before he retires. Now, he said that actually about 2 years ago. I think I was on 5 Live commenting about it, and lots of people have heard it. What's next? And have you thought about the bench or silk?
I haven't.
Don't say anything you're not supposed to. I know these things are a bit secretive.
I haven't. I'm quite comfortable what I'm doing now in terms of working behind the scenes. Well, it would be hard to say me working behind the scenes, but to continue what I do at even a greater pace, to try and, as I say, inspire the next generation, work with people like Tom and other people who think like me, who have the same ideals, that it's about talent and being given the opportunity without any sort of pre-existing rules, without any sort of preconditions to prevent you from doing so. And as long as I've got the platform, I'll continue to do so.
Fantastic. Now, before you leave us here in this wonderful building that we're in here, Browne Jacobson, and I move back onto Tom, I like handbags. That's kind of my indulgence, and fountain pens. You're quite a modest looking man, very smart. You're wearing a leather strap watch. I don't see you dripped in gold or anything or anything of that sort. Have you got any indulgences that you can share? I mean, if it's Mars bar, fine. But I'm just wondering.
I think Tom knows one of my biggest indulgences.
Tell us, Tom, or he can tell us.
It's Chelsea Football Club.
Well, come on. I'm in a city with Man United and Man City.
I'm a big Chelsea fan, as you know. That I'm a bit disgruntled with the fact that we've just lost one of our greatest managers. So yeah. I was in a darkened room before I came here for the interview. And even now, I'm not happy. As I can see, the clouds are gathering outside, and I just hope that's not raining on Chelsea's parade. But I do like to travel. I do like to, watch my favourite team, go on a holiday, have a great time, and be myself. I've got the same friends I grew up with. One of the greatest compliments my brother ever paid me, because I never ever beat him in Trivial Pursuit. Ever.
I know, I saw that in the book. I love that. Yeah, and the greatest compliment he ever paid me was this. He goes, "Shaun, I'm so proud of you when you won Mastermind, but guess what? You're not even the champion in your own household." And if that doesn't keep you grounded, I don't know what will. Well, that is brilliant. And Shaun, just to mark sort of, how brilliant you've been, not just for those who are coming behind us in our careers, but even my own children now absolutely love the chase.
Thank you.
And they're not even watching the live ones. They're watching the old ones.
That's the way you learn.
Yeah.
As I always say, I'm no cleverer than anybody else, but I'll give you one more tip in relation to how you can improve your mind. If you're interested in something, you'll never forget it. And that's all I'm going to be for. Is interest.
Yeah, in every way.
Pleasure.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Cheers, brother.
I've still got Tom Lyas here with me at Browne Jacobson, and I want to focus a bit more on Tom because he brings a different perspective to our sector, and his background background is a bit different, as you said, Tom, isn't it? So I want to revisit some of those points and then talk about some of the amazing awards you've been winning. I thought I had awards, but you've got like some serious award, I won't swear, going on, and why they're so important. So I want to go back, Tom, because we know that you're not a lawyer, you're in kind of talent recruitment, really, aren't you? But before you came to Browne Jacobson, where had you worked before? And I want to just ask you about your impressions when you came here, about how graduate recruitment was and how it's improved since, the FAIR scheme, fair access into real work experience.
Yeah, indeed. So I'm not from a legal background, as I said. I'm really interested in people. Sort of quite a natural networker. Genuinely believe that no matter who you speak to, you'll get something from that conversation.
Yes.
Even if it's a lesson that you think, actually, I don't want to be like that, but you take something from every conversation you have.
Yeah.
So I've got a real innate interest in the human sort of being. I joined, as I said, Browne Jacobson about 6 years ago now, so 6th of June 2016. I remember it like it was yesterday. Prior to that, as I said, I've been at Whitbread in the hospitality industry. Prior to that, Tesco within the retail industry, looking after very diverse graduate programs such as supply chain, digital, finance, marketing, but also the store side as well. And then before that, I'd been in, like most people in my position, I'd been through the agency route. So I worked as a recruitment agent for the built environment, the property industry, so construction, engineering, architecture, estate surveyors, etc.
Not terribly diverse there. Diverse sector,
diverse sectors, in terms of diverse sectors. But probably about 20 years in terms of total doing what I do.
Amazing. So when you came to Browne Jacobson, and indeed I suppose the sector, because 6 years ago to now, Browne Jacobson's a different place. When I look at the graduate recruitment, I see the lawyers who have qualified in that time. And when I use the term diversity, I'm talking about protected characteristics, not just race or gender, but other protected characteristics. You've really impacted that. And do you think that's been mainly because of the Fair Access into Real Experience program? Or because what are the stats now from where you were to now?
It is interesting. I think it doesn't require me to give commentary that sort of says is there how diverse or lack of diversity within the top law firms in the UK. I think it's a well documented challenge for everybody. And I think one of the biggest compliments that anybody has ever paid to this firm, externally, is we now have a reputation, quite rightly so, that we're a firm of action, not words.
Yes.
And I think I still see organisations that unfortunately will say one thing, and when you scratch beneath the surface, it's not quite as authentic as you might see. But I mean, that is. That's something that I'm sure over a period of time will change, and people do change, organisations change at a different rate.
Yes.
When I came in, as I said, 2016, the statistics were quite different to how they are now. But I suppose the question is, were they that different to anyone else within the legal profession? And I think the answer is probably not. But actually, this is the one thing that we have been extremely. I say lucky. I have to remind myself. I've said this a few times. I have to remind myself we worked hard to get some of the accolades that we've done, and I can assure you, it isn't just me. It is a significant team effort here. But what we've done hasn't taken a huge amount of resource. That hasn't cost a lot of money, if any, really. And these are small changes that make a significant difference. So, when we first came in, actually, I like talking about how different the statistics were, because I think it helps others who might be fearful of, well, I don't want to talk about my data. I don't even want to try and send a survey out to work out what the makeup of our population and our employees is, because I'm scared about what I'm going to find.
Yes.
The best thing is just get out there. And once you've got I had this conversation, strangely enough, with an absolutely fantastic leader, Sarah Atkinson of the Social Mobility Foundation yesterday. And we were saying that data that tells you a story is never, whether it's good or bad, is never going to be a bad thing or something to be fearful of. I mean, we had 7% in our junior lawyers, so within the trainee population, just 7% were Black, Asian, or minority ethnic. 100% of them came from Russell Group universities, and actually, I think we did even more detail. They came from just 5 different universities.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that. I've probably spoken to some of those, as well as others.
And obviously, all had a 2-1, all had pretty much straight A's, etc. And I don't think that at the time was particularly different to kind of what everyone else was doing.
No.
I mean, the biggest change for us, and it is only a very small action, but it's made significant difference, is we removed the 2-1 and the need for an A and 2 Bs. And what we started doing is looking, as I said, at people in context to the background. So, if you go to a really good school, if you go to a good uni, chances are you're probably likely to get good grades because you've got great support around you.
Yes.
But actually, if you're from a single parent or low income household, that, even getting to university is a major achievement.
Yeah.
So getting a 2-2 that was, hard fought, you shouldn't be sort of penalised for that, so to speak. And I think a lot of the recruitment processes, which I talked about previously, had an artificially high barrier that wasn't naturally going to translate into, well, you're great at uni, great at school, you're probably going to be great in the workplace. There's too many other factors around it.
Yes.
I mean, ultimately, fast forward, we've seen a steady increase every year, but you fast forward to 2020, 65% of our junior population is now non-Russell Group. 45% of our junior population are Black, Asian, minority ethnic, which is a huge change.
Yeah.
But there is a distinct sort of intersectional piece between low socioeconomic background, the type of grade you're going to get, and particularly we've seen in London, more aspiring Black professionals have come through from that background.
Yes.
I mean, it's the whole principle. And I know this is something that people sort of refer to, is, I want our firm. So in my day job as head of resourcing, I'm responsible for everything from an admin hire to a full equity hire. I want our people to be representative of both the clients that we serve and the communities in which we operate.
Yes.
And again, we're getting amazing feedback from clients who genuinely say, you're some of the most down-to-earth lawyers I've met.
Yeah.
You are like me.
Yes.
And these are comments that a few years ago weren't being said. And that's got to tell you everything you need to know about why you should change.
Yeah. Well, you're spot on there. And I think that's because sometimes when we have these arguments and conversations about diversity or lectures and things so on, it feels like it's always a moral argument. But actually, when the clients are saying things like that and they're saying, well, what does your team of lawyers look like? Are they representative? I think it's a Coca-Cola and some of the big clients say, no, don't say that of yours, but they're using the American model and saying, who's on your team? People like CBRE are like, they don't want to see, 10 blokes and then sort of somebody else from a protected characteristic background at the end as a paralegal who's having no participation in it. So it's not just a moral argument, is it? It's a business case. And we know that from McKinsey. So it's really good to hear the clients saying, oh, yeah.
Indeed. I mean, I think, as part of my day job, I'm asked, along with Ollie, who I referred to earlier, who's our head of T&I, we're regularly consulted, either by the lawyers or the client and marketing team, to pitch in and give statistics around our diversity for bids and tenders.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, we're not going to be far wrong if we said that actually even 30, maybe even 40% of a tender and a bid document these days is actually relating to diversity.
Yeah.
And what are you doing to, what's your makeup of your team, but actually what are you doing to continually open those doors and build more diversity into it? But I mean, it's interesting because what I'm so proud of and what I love, and not necessarily here to tell Browne Jacobson, but we started on this journey a good 6 years ago. We were ahead of the curve, so to speak, because it really mattered and was genuinely part of what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
It's only really in the last couple of years that it's been slightly more forced upon law firms and other businesses by clients to start answering those questions. And I think it's interesting because, I mean, I love talking on the subject. You and I, Sally, have talked about this previously.
Yeah, we have.
I am not ever going to just be happy to influence the Browne Jacobson world.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to be happy if I just, am able to influence the legal profession. What I want to do is, unashamedly try and change everything, change the world and make it more accessible for everybody. But I think because we started that journey so authentically, it really is now lots of clients, lots of other businesses getting in touch to say, well, actually, can you help us? Can you, what can we learn from the experience that you've done? Because we have 6 years of data that tells a really fantastic story of coming from a not very good place, embracing that, acting on it.
Yeah.
And it's getting us where we want to be. Still loads to do, but it's made a big difference to us.
Yeah, and and the quality of speakers that you get, I get asked to speak at a lot of things, but they've got to be things that I think are having impact, or they're not token, diversity weeks, and where sometimes you might get a bit of travel money to go and speak at the diversity week in a business or a law firm or whatever, and then actually you discover that in fact they're up for a racial discrimination claim or a sex discrimination claim, or there's something about sexual orientation. Actually, the impact of your work has been really interesting, and therefore it's attracted fantastic lineup of speakers wanting to influence and change the future of the landscape. So it's been really good. And I want to ask you this, how you get 10,000 students and aspiring lawyers on your virtual events, even in COVID, because you won these awards as well. I don't know whether that's just because of the numbers. I'm going to read them to you because they're worthy of some of the most brilliant accolades. I thought I had awards, Tom, and I know you'll say it's not just me, it's my team. But you're a big drive for it. You've got effectively 11 awards. You won an award by the FT, Financial Times Innovation Award, the Lawyer, UK Diversity Award, a fantastic award. The premier of all of these awards, I haven't listed all of them, I know, but is the Social Mobility Award, where you're number one, I think. It's the first time a law firm's been
in.
And then let me finish. This is my favorite. The LexisNexis Legal Personality of the Year. And you're not even a lawyer. I'm like, oh my gosh. So, tell me about the social mobility point, because, people still have a perception about our profession and who gets in. And so I think that social mobility one, you're especially proud of, aren't you?
So there's a couple of things in there. I mean, basically, Browne Jacobson is genuinely a very humble firm. I think, interestingly, and I keep referring back to Ollie, when Ollie came in, he asked us about it. He said, we didn't necessarily realise just how progressive what we were doing is, because we didn't really look externally. We're like, well, let's just do this. Let's change this.
Yeah.
It's only when somebody else came in externally and said, you know what you're doing is really actually against, the market's kind of benchmark. This is really turning the dial, to use a cliche.
Yeah.
So Ollie then introduced the idea of, you should apply and you should submit, for some awards. So we thought, okay, let's see what happens. Now, it was, as I said, we hadn't really sort of won anything. We have a very compelling story. And I think that refers back to exactly what I just said, is it's the data. So we can genuinely say we started here, we did that, and this is where it's got.
Yeah.
And I think, for anybody thinking of going for awards, it's all about, well, tell me what's changed.
Yeah.
It does come, interestingly, with... it does make you have a little bit of imposter syndrome. There's no question about it. What Ollie said is really important, is actually it's the platform winning an award gives you, particularly if you win something that's reasonably, kind of high profile one, because you then have a platform to inspire others. And if you are really doing it for the right reasons, it's not about, look at us, we've won an award. It is, we've won this, and this is why we've won it, and here's what you can do to also follow in our footsteps.
Yes.
And I think that was that was it. I mean, it's interesting because for some of the fee earners, the legal awards, so the likes of the Lawyer, the British Legal Awards, that means a lot to them.
Yeah.
For me, there's something called the SOMOs, which are the Social Mobility Awards.
I know them.
And that is, for me, I've for a decade, I've looked at these and I've thought, wow, could you imagine? And here we are holding a SOMO award. And then it's not an award, but there is as you said, the number one ranking, which is for the Social Mobility Foundation. They have an employer index each year.
Yeah.
It's about, it's a huge, documents complete. It's in 8 sections. I think ours totaled about 70 something pages by the time we'd finished it.
Wow.
But actually, what's great about this is we first entered it, they publish a top 75 of all employers in all sectors in the UK. It's a very, very, it's kind of like the benchmark for how you're doing in terms of your organisation for progressing social mobility.
Yes.
The first year we entered, we came 82nd. We didn't even make it. But what you get from it is a brilliant report that tells you, well, here's what you're doing well, but actually here's everything else you could do. Yeah. And we use that as an instruction manual, and it was free. It didn't cost anything to get this. And I champion this all the time. Every time anyone says, what's the best resource available? So we used that, and we implemented a number of things, such as, we talked about the removal of the academic criteria, but anonymizing recruitment. So not having names and backgrounds and ethnicities on a CV, and that made a huge difference. We talked about the introduction of the FAIR program and fully paid work experience with targets where a minimum 50% of paid work experience will go to someone who hasn't got a connection at the firm, hasn't previously had work experience, etc., etc. And the introduction of Rare, which is a brand, they have a contextualized recruitment system.
Yeah, they're brilliant.
They are absolutely incredible. They've been around for a decade or so, and they are incredible. But actually, that took us then to 5th place. And then in October, November of 2021, as I said, it's a day that will live long in the memory. Absolutely got a phone call from Sarah Atkinson, Chief Exec of the Social Mobility Foundation. It's one of the only times I've ever been truly speechless.
I can see you're emotional as you're talking about it now.
And she just sort of said, look, we've been talking about the top 10, and I thought, brilliant, we haven't fallen from 5th to 50th. And she basically just said, look, you're going to be named as number 1. And it was a genuine, absolute thrill. I can only describe it as just an amazing achievement, and we've worked very, very hard. And again, immediately it comes to the platform that gives you. And I've been extremely lucky. Again, Sally, we talked about this. 40% of my week is probably now, advising and offering, just genuine advice and lessons to either clients or other organisations who have picked up on the fact that we've done some great work in social mobility, and how can we help them? Yeah. And it comes back to what Shaun said, what I said, and what I know, absolutely know, you're motivated by is when the time comes to hang up the boots, so to speak. Yeah. I'll only remember, I want to know what I'll be remembered for, my legacy, and I really want my legacy to be that I tore down as many barriers and walls to access to a profession as I possibly could. Yes. And as I said, the platform it gives you to help inspire others to do more is just invaluable.
Yeah, no, and I really applaud you for that. Wholly agree with you. Because Tom, your role here, apart from the FAIR scheme and all the brilliant work you're doing there, is recruiting entrants, graduates, or undergraduates, if you like, postgrads, to, as you said, equity partners. So, it's quite a broad spectrum of what to see. So I want to just ask you 2 quick questions. One is any advice or tips for applications? And I often say, well, don't have spelling mistakes in your applications or whatever it is you're applying for, some of those basic things. And the second thing is I want to ask you about well-being. You've got quite a big job here. And, sometimes I feel like the lawyers and the non-lawyers who are sort of working behind the scenes to get the law firms going, or the clerkings in chambers, they work harder than us sometimes, and I wanted to kind of know, what do you do? Are you like Shaun, who hopefully is not supporting Chelsea, or for your well-being and wellness, but what do you do, or what would you like to do for your own wellness? So the first question is really about, maybe 3 quick tips and guidance, because you did actually give some of this advice in my book, Talking Law and Careers, the last one with the red cover. So people can read more about it, but I wondered if you had some quick tips there.
Yeah, indeed. And I certainly would say, it's, again, you talk about kind of like, absolutely cherished, memorable days. I will never, ever forget the day that the copy that you sent me of the book, for which I still can't believe you asked me to
it's for charity, so it sold loads of copies.
It was magical.
Oh.
So thank you for giving me that moment. Absolutely, indeed. And the contributors to that book, it's an invaluable
I know.
resource for anybody aspiring to the profession. But I mean, interestingly, I only really sort of have one major tip. I mean, I could.
Well, they can read the book. We'll give away 20 copies. Get in touch and I'll give away 20 copies.
I could recall lots, but actually, interestingly for me, you know, the same piece of advice all the time is people always get hung up on the end goal. And they'll say, well, actually, how do I get a training contract?
Yes.
That's the first question. And actually, that's too big a question. What you want to do is work out, what does the process look like? So for us, you make an online application.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the first step. The second step is, if you're successful, you would have a telephone interview. If you're successful at the telephone interview, you then go to an assessment centre. And if you're successful at the assessment centre, you know, you're either onto the summer vacation scheme or you're offered a training contract.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, people want to jump quickly from A to Z.
Yeah.
And that's the worst thing, because you're taking on too much. What I always say is, actually, you need to know how to stay in the race. That's all you need to do. So somebody, I can't remember where I heard this, so I'm certainly not going to take claim to this, but actually I remember a long time ago someone saying, if you're being chased by a lion, you don't need to be the quickest, you just need to make sure you're not the slowest. That's all you need to do. So for me, all you need to do, the biggest tip is say, well, okay, work out and ask what the process is.
Yeah.
So for me, the question is, okay, how do I make an application that's going to get me a telephone interview? Because that's the first step. That's all you need to do.
Yes.
And you're right, interestingly there, I mean, Browne Jacobson's quite different, because about 70% of applications move from online application to telephone interview. We do a lot more telephone interviews. My team hate me for this, because I make them do about 400 telephone interviews. But that's where you have the quality conversation. Yeah. Unfortunately, you know, it's well documented, there are other organisations in and outside of law who will only let 30% through, because their HR teams want to sift a big number, and it's convenient for them. But for me, that's just a loss of talent. Yeah. So for me, it is, don't look at the process as a whole. Break it down into bite-sized, easy chunks, and work out if you want to go from first base to second base, so to speak. How do you do that? If you try and take on advice and think, well, how am I going to get the whole process? You'll be totally overwhelmed.
Oh my God, I love that. I'm writing it down, and I've been doing the job for 23 years. I'm thinking it's such a great advice. I really think that is fantastic for people who are I out as well. So
to answer your second question, I mean, it's interesting, because I would class myself as someone who is highly resilient. I come into contact with lots of people on a daily basis. Quite often they'll want things and I have to say no, and then you see somebody's sort of true colours. But interestingly, and absolutely not ashamed to kind of talk about this, during the first lockdown, I think it was around November. Yeah. I think it was the first time I realised that actually my mental health had suffered a little bit. Yeah. As a result of being quite alone at home. I've got a wife and I've got a lovely dog, but actually from a work perspective, I wasn't around the people that I trusted. Yeah. And actually I started to sort of feel like it was strange, because I felt like my team had sort of stopped communicating with me and felt like they were leaving me out of things. Yeah. But when we then raised it, interesting, they said, you've been moving really distant away from us. And I was like, no, I haven't. Yeah. But I mean, it just goes to show, and it was actually, again, I'm really grateful that I had that experience where I was like, I have been working silly hours. I've taken too much on. Yeah. I've tried to do it alone rather than with the support of others. Yeah. And actually, do you know what? Even I am susceptible to this. Totally. And I genuinely felt, if this could impact me, who I genuinely would have said I am strong-minded, this is genuinely something that could impact anyone. Yeah. And I think it was a real good moment to understand that just how important good mental health is. Yeah. And I am so pleased that the world and society has moved to, over the last few years, to be able to talk about really challenging subjects, race, mental health. These are things that properly impact the world.
Totally. And the flexibility is not just for women,
Exactly.
Agile working is not just for women who've been wanting it.
But I mean, to answer your question, I mean, I'm on LinkedIn because it's a professional platform for me.
Yes.
But I'm not on any other. So I have Facebook, but it's very rarely used. But I'm not on Instagram. I'm not on TikTok. I do think social media is amazing, but at the same time, it gives. If I was young, I think I'd think, wow, that's what I need to be. It really sends a message that I'm not sure is always true. And I think it can be quite a dangerous place. So I tend to steer clear of it because it can be quite a toxic place.
Yeah.
I think, I've come to realise, as I said earlier, I'm 42 now, but I understand I can only control what I can control.
Yeah. And
I'm kind of quite comfortable in my own skin now to be like, do you know what? I don't necessarily feel I have to prove anything anymore. I think I've got a good track record. I've done what I can. People know my intentions and ambitions and drive is there.
Yeah. But
actually, there's so many things you just can't control. So don't worry about it.
Yeah.
You definitely can't please everybody. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
And I think as well, the biggest thing I would say, if anybody asked me this, whether, certainly if they were sort of, entering a profession, is people were very quick to offer criticism, but it only matters from those that you value.
Yes.
Anything else is just noise.
Somebody
wants an old boss of mine, one of the best people to spend some time with. She said feedback's like a pair of socks. You can put them in the drawer and never see them again, or you can choose to wear it and wear it with pride and learn from it. So it's I think that's kind of how I keep myself in the best possible mental shape.
It's fantastic. I love that. It's just remembering it, isn't it, and practicing it. Tom, I want to ask you something you alluded to there, actually, which is about imposter syndrome. That we talk about imposter syndrome. I think Shaun may even mention this, and I've talked about it because I suffer from it, and sometimes we think men don't suffer from it. But I just noticed that you didn't go to uni. You said earlier you chose not to, and so I just wondered if that's we all have imposter syndrome about different things, and sometimes the imposter can feed as for me anyway, an adrenaline thing to say, if you say you can't do that or you're worried about it, use it to feed that kind of competitive side of me. But it can also be a downfall where you wonder on it. And I just wondered if you've suffered from it and how you got over it. Because when I was younger, even now to an extent, I use learning and knowledge. I know we've had a quiz master here, but he is right as that. I want to know more than everybody in the room. So that's how I got over the imposter that made you feel like it didn't belong.
It's I think it's interesting. I am, despite what people might say, and they always find this incredibly hard to believe, I am, there's quite a lot of self-doubt with me. I am quite an insecure individual, and I think it's hard to know where that comes from, and I don't think I do know where it is. And it is definitely, insecurity is pretty much imposter syndrome.
It is.
When am I going to get found out? I mean, the most bizarre sort of thing, as I said, it's filled me with total fear when somebody dropped a note through and said, just to let you know, you've been shortlisted for Legal Personality of the Year.
Yes.
And it was going to go to a public vote, and I thought, oh my goodness, what on earth? I then sat in the room, and as I said, I've been extremely lucky, and I am not going to deny that it's been a genuinely fantastic journey over the last 6, 7, 8 months with all the awards we've won. But every single time I go to that, there's never ever any sort of complacency thinking we're going to win this. So I'm sat there, and actually those awards are quite terrifying.
They are.
But I think my boss, I've got honestly, I've got a brilliant boss at the moment, Declan, and he knows I'm quite insecure. And it's interesting because he's like, it's quite useful as long as he doesn't go too far. Because he said it means I never ever have to worry about you being a self-starter. You are absolutely every day trying to deliver.
Yeah.
But I think, one thing I have learned over the years is you shouldn't ever be afraid to say, I feel like I'm not sure where to go here.
Yeah.
I've learned over time what I'm really good at. I'm highly creative. I'm very innovative. I know I'm not very process driven, and I know that sometimes I find that the hard part.
Hang on, is that admin?
Yeah,
which I often say.
Possibly, yeah. But at the same time, I know what I need to work on.
Yeah.
But I think you just have to be comfortable to say, look, actually, I'm feeling a bit out of my depth. Can you help?
Yeah.
I used to take on, when I was younger, because I was incredibly competitive. I felt if I asked for help, it was a failure. And now I realise straight away, I'm like, the quicker I ask for help, the more I'm going to get where I want to be.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest piece of advice I could offer anyone is say, if you're not sure about something or you're worried, talk about it, ask for help, get back on, and that will then give you the confidence to get over that imposter syndrome.
Spot on, because I was going to move on to ask you, what's the advice that you never got or advice to your younger self? And I don't know if you can add to that, because that you answered that so beautifully, which wasn't the question I was asking. But I just thought, if you have you're very young, Tom. I think there's only like 1 or 2 years between you and I. Whether on reflection, whether you've.
I think I said in your book, actually. Should I say our book? Maybe.
Oh well, no. It is our book,
I did say, and I do. This isn't for everybody, but it worked for me, and I think this is the thing: is you have to figure it out for yourself. But people, society, or the world, whatever you want to sort of describe, it will place certain pressures on you. So, it's kind of, well, you're meant to do this, you're meant to do that. This is how things are meant to pan out. And actually, I said in my book, I never had, and I don't still have, a career plan. I'm very much let's not look too far down the track. As long as I keep enjoying it and keep adding value and keep learning. And I think people need to understand, very similar to how I've said about the recruitment process, don't look at the whole thing, just look at what's the next step.
Yeah.
I think you need to do the same with your career. What do you want to do in the next 2 years? Don't worry about what you want to do in 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Because, probably what you're going to be doing in 10 or 15 years may not even exist right now. If you'd have asked me 10 years ago, would I be sat here talking to you, talking about wonderful accolades and the difference I've made in this? I literally would have been like, is it the 1st of April? So I think, just don't put the pressure on yourself to look too far down the track.
Yeah. Do
what you want to do. Listen to the advice of others, but don't be forced into something because you think someone else wants you to do it.
Yeah. Wow. Really good. It's a really good point, isn't it? And there's also a point about kind of progression and what progression looks like, where you think you should be or ought to be by comparison to colleagues, isn't it?
Stephanie Boyce, who I know is a good
on this podcast.
Yours, and I've been extremely lucky to spend time in her presence. She says her piece of advice is great. She said, nothing comes to you before your time. Yeah. And you get it when you get it. You get it when you're ready. And I think people need to understand that we're all on a different journey.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things I've seen that I think really stresses a graduate out is when they start comparing themselves to a peer group who they think are at the same stage of life, career, whatever. But actually, if you knew their background, they say, well, they should be a bit further on than you because you don't know where they've come from.
Yeah.
And it's this comparing your career to others. That's the biggest danger for a young person that I've seen. Make yourself comfortable with your journey and you'll get where you get to when you're ready to get where you're getting.
Yeah. That's fantastic advice, actually. And if I may say so, Tom, I'm writing a book at the moment called Talking Law and Leadership. And it's about how to be a leader and can we all be leaders? And, if somebody said to you, I call myself an accidental leader because I never really thought I am leading. And then they said, well, you set up this organization, you're leading on a number of issues and you're an expert in your field. And I thought, oh, crikey, maybe I am. Oh, and I just, just listening to you and having spent an afternoon with you and Shaun as he was here, you're a leader in your own right. And are you comfortable in accepting that?
Yeah, I think...
not just the awards, you've been leading on the issue in the sector, perhaps which was lagging, and you've brought it up to the front. Are you quite comfortable?
Yeah, I think so. I think I think leadership, the topic of leadership is something that actually really enjoy and I find fascinating.
Yeah.
And over my career, I've had exposure to incredible leaders. You know, as I said, when you're responsible for, you know, resourcing, you know, that's, as I said, at junior levels, but actually you do, it provides you with the opportunity to engage and speak to stakeholders who are very, very senior. You know, I'm not fearful of people. You know, I am highly respectful of, you know, I love meeting people that have been successful and have achieved.
Yes.
And more often than not, as I said, you know, you learn great things from them. But, you know, it's nice to be referred to as a leader, because I think I want to give back to people. If there's something that I've learned, and to be honest, most of the things I've learned are through mistakes. I make enough of them on the hour, every hour. But actually, it's, you know.
But isn't that the best way to learn?
It's a nice way. And I think as well, I think, you know, the one thing that I've never sort of fallen into the trap of is ever assuming that people want to hear my advice. I'm always happy to offer it, but it can only give the idea. And if you take it up and listen to it and act on it, brilliant. If you don't, absolutely fine.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, I genuinely care if somebody's coming to ask me, you know, what my thoughts are, or, you know, can I get some advice from you? The fact they've taken the time and feel that my advice is going to be valuable, actually, that's enough for me to want to give them my time. But yeah, if I can, on a daily basis, if I can give one piece of advice to people and it makes a little difference to their life, happy days, whether that's leadership, coaching, mentoring, advice, whatever. But no, I think it's nice. I would like to, you know, I would wear the leadership badge with pride.
Fantastic. Because, you know, sometimes I think we're all a bit reluctant, or maybe it's just me, or maybe because I haven't got sort of this QC title after my name or something. Tom, I've omitted to ask you about your favourite book, and don't say Shaun's, because people can read it themselves. But if it is, please say it, because it is a really powerful book, which is why I was plugging it a little bit, because he hasn't, he's not been sort of plugging about it. And your favourite book, and also if you've got a favourite legal character that you can share with me, and if there was going to be a film about your life, because I think it might be time for you to write your own book now. You could be in my leadership one again, but talking about different issues. But you know, if it was going to be a story about you, who would play you? Me, I think maybe Viola Davis, because she's got nice arms, but now she needs to be a British actress. Yeah, so I'm thinking Sophia. I mean, this is purely, you know, in some weird fantasy world that I'm talking about here. But
I mean, I'm not a, you know, and maybe, I don't know, maybe this is why I never went to uni. I'm not a huge reader. I am very much one who, you know, when I'm on holiday, I'll take 3 or 4 books, but that's probably about the only sort of genuine time I will read a book.
Yeah.
There's a couple of books that stick in mind, both kind of pretty good, but my favourite, I think, I read, I don't remember the author. It's going back a few years now. It's called One Red Paperclip. Now, I think there's been a similar-ish book recently, but this was just fascinating for me. I'm not going to delve too deeply into the psychology of why I chose it, but it was about somebody who basically started with 1 red paperclip and they traded it a number of times until they eventually got a house.
Wow.
And I think, you know, maybe that instilled something in me to think, you know what, if you start with something small, you can get something huge. And it was all about, you know, how they put themselves out there, how they sort of marketed this. There was definitely a lot of synergies. I thought, you've taken something tiny and you've made it something massive. And that really, I really liked that.
Yeah.
So yeah, 1 red paperclip. Favorite legal character?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a few out there, isn't there? I think the one that springs to mind, I mean, obviously, there's a number of characters in Suits, which I really like.
Yeah.
We
are sitting in a Suits type.
We're sitting in that.
You know, we're in London, looking at, you know, the Shard and all sorts of. It's like being in New York, isn't it? Yeah,
indeed. I mean, I think you know, Gina Torres, you know, who obviously played managing partner within Suits. I think she's absolutely fantastic character. And then I suppose, who would play me? I mean,
who would play you?
If it was a physical obvious representation, then of course Jason Statham is
I knew you were going to say that before. I knew it as you were saying it, and I'm looking. I thought he's going to say Jason Statham.
Right
I know
now,
he is.
if Frankie, my wife, heard me say that, she would be in absolute stitches. I think she'd like me to be Jason Statham, but unfortunately I'm not. Maybe I'm Jason Statham in about 30 years. But no, I mean it's it's a great question. I mean, I think whoever was to play me, as long as they were, getting across, as I said, somebody who wants to leave a bit of a good legacy, quite humble, quite approachable, and just a genuine, as we say up north, a good egg.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I'd be happy with whoever the character was.
Amazing. Now, I always ask this question because I'm interested, and I'm not inviting you to leave your job. But I am interested because I know you get a lot of other firms, because you're keen to kind of revolutionize not just the sector, but more widely. And that's demonstrated by the different awards you won. That you get contacted by a lot of law firms, businesses, from construction to kind of property, to say what you've done in law with the FAIR scheme and generally is amazing. Can you help us? And so my question is, what's next? But could what's next be some sort of freelance consultancy where different sectors come and say, look, we're not doing greatly on a variety of diversity, equity, and inclusion areas. Or whatever, or recruitment, or whatever. Can you give us some consultancy or training to see how we could do better? And I just wondered if that might be next, or have you got other ideas? Have you got different ideas? Are you just going to go global? We're going to be like Browne Jacobson in Argentina or somewhere, or write a book. I don't know. I just wondered.
I think, strange enough, it's something I would never have dreamed of. Genuinely would never have thought it would be possible. But, writing the chapter for your own book, I do feel that there's a book in me somewhere.
Yeah.
What that looks like, I don't know. I have heard and seen and witnessed the most extraordinary things in 20 years of worth of recruitment and interview. I think I would have to go under some sort of pseudonym, or I would be
Shaun Wallace.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I'll go for Dr. Wallace. Yeah. So look out for that one. But I think again, I think great leaders offer things, not saying for free, but I think I think good leadership is genuinely trying to help others and take others with you.
Yes. Authentically.
It would be extremely uncomfortable for me, and I have had this conversation on a couple of occasions, to effectively sort of commoditize or commercialize what we're trying to do. I think there is I think as soon as, unfortunately, this country, that's going to sound like it's going to get me in a world of trouble, isn't it? I think there is something where, when you are successful, people try and shoot you down, unfortunately. And I think if you position yourself out there as, listen to me, I'm the expert, I'm the guru, there's only one thing that's going to happen. I am an open book, and that's the same phrase Shaun used earlier.
Yeah, he did.
I have to balance that I have a day job with good advice, but do I see myself going into consultancy role? Never say never. What I really would like, and this is something that we have in the pipeline, is the inequality of career opportunity in the UK happens much earlier than school and university.
Yeah.
And we are looking at delivering something which we're calling Fair Start. Which is a great play on the FAIR brand. It's the start of your career, and it's fair start, everyone's equal.
Yes.
But we're looking at what we can do in primary schools.
Yeah.
And that's something which we've got a program which we're just about ready to do, hopefully ready to roll out by October, November this year.
Fantastic.
Which will give an idea and an introduction to careers and skills and aspiration to really, really young students.
Yeah.
With the aim of trying to help them understand that absolutely nothing is impossible. So watch that space.
I'm already excited by it because I love, I think we should have Law Day, which I've been talking about for so many years. in primary schools, or in addition to Careers Day or whatever. So I just think that is a fantastic, fair start. You heard it here first. Ooh, revelations. I can't wait to see how that pans out. It's been wonderful, Tom, to spend an afternoon with you and
really
Shaun,
appreciate the time.
and really hear what you've been pioneering here. It's really innovative and it's really exciting. I can't wait for the next chapter.
Thank you very much.
You need to come back and talk to me about it, which would be great.
I will always take your call.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks to Shaun and thanks to Tom for telling me all about their careers and lives in the law. Thanks again to Browne Jacobson for supporting this episode. Do visit brownejacobson.com to learn more about their work. You can also learn more about the law group at Salford Business School in Salford, who also supported this episode. I'm pleased to let you know that Women in the Law will be hosting 2 events in line with International Women's Day in March. Firstly, a dinner on the 9th of March and a conference. Both are always great events and a fantastic opportunity to meet people, network, and meet people at different stages of their legal careers. There are lots of other things that Women in the Law UK do, such as workshops, book clubs, webinars, seminars. Do visit the website at womeninthelawuk.com to obtain a ticket for any of our events, which are online or face-to-face. If you'd like to support the Talking Law podcast, we're looking for new sponsors. Please do get in touch. You can follow me on Twitter, SallyPenny1, or Instagram, SJSallyPenny, or on LinkedIn at SallyPennyMBE. Alternatively, you can follow Women in the Law UK on LinkedIn. There are plenty of episodes to catch up on, where you will see interviews from Gina Miller, Rob Rinder, the Right Honourable David Lammy. Thank you so much to our production team at Purposeful Podcasts. If you would like to show your support for the podcast, do like, subscribe, and recommend it to friends, family, colleagues. I'm Sally Penny MBE. Bye for now.